Okay, so if we roll on to the first slide, welcome everyone. This is our Strength in Numbers co-founder event. It's something new that the team decided to put on after feedback from students and thoughts and discussions amongst the team that we should create a platform where like-minded students can meet and talk, share ideas, advice and support, and hopefully find a partner or at least someone that you can share your startup journey with and um, help each other really. So we see it would be a lot different if we were all still in Studio X. We'd have more of this community feel and it would happen a bit more naturally and organically. But as we are in the situation we find ourselves in, we thought this might be nice just to get some people together, um, just to have a good discussion really. There might be more people join us throughout the day, so we'll see as we go, but we may as well make a start now. So if we go to the next slide and just have a brief look at the agenda, what we want to get out of today really is a chance to really understand partnerships and what they involve and the possible value of having a partnership for you and the person that you might be partnering with. We'll look at 5 things to know about choosing them and the kind of pitfalls to avoid, the benefits of working locally, things like that. And then our breakout sessions are going to focus on us as individuals and our personalities and how we work as people. And then another breakout session will focus on our team working skills and how to put those into practice, particularly when you're working with people that you don't really know that well or might not have met up until recently. And then ultimately, like we've said, it's a chance to meet other entrepreneurs and hopefully share your skill set and just have a bit of networking, create a wider community for you to benefit from. So that's the agenda. If we go on to the next slide, for those of you that haven't met us before, we are the Essex Startups team, headed by Andy. He's our head of startups. Lauren and myself are enterprise officers. Lauren's freshly back from a year on maternity leave, and I am staying because a new role was introduced, which is great. And Christian is the assistant to our team and is often very valuable on these events and things. So he's here to help administer. And then we've got our entrepreneurs in residence. So Magda and James are out in the business world themselves, running their own businesses, and they come in once or twice a week to support the team with events, one-to-ones, and other advice and mentoring. So what's up next? The first things first, we're going to do an icebreaker, which Lauren is going to run. And like what we'd say at any of our events is get involved as much as you can. Obviously, we're not here to pressure anyone into doing anything, but what you put in, you'll get more out of. So yeah, try to join in and let's see how we go. Over to you, Lauren.
Hello everyone, nice to see you all and see some familiar faces now that I have seen on the last few workshops I've been in, so it's great to see you coming to all of these as well. So as you may all know, we always just like to start our sessions with a bit of an icebreaker just to make everyone feel a bit relaxed and get to know each other a little bit more as well. So we have played this one before, so some of you might know it. So Cards Against Mundanity. It's a little bit more personal in a sense, but don't worry, there's nothing too personal that you'll reveal. So what we're going to do is there'll be questions. And there'll be a question to start with, which I'll start myself. So I'll start it off, and then I'm going to nominate the next person to go to answer the next question. And then that person will nominate, and so on and so forth. So it's just kind of getting a little bit more knowledge and kind of understanding each other, but they are quite fun questions as well. If there's anything you don't want to answer, just let us know and we can skip it as well. Okay, so if I can have the first question, please, Christian. Okay, if I could pick 1 year of my life to do over, what would it be and why? I have a feeling that this answer might be the same for everybody here. Possibly 2020. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, for myself, I did have a really great year because I actually had my daughter. So she was born last February, right before like the big lockdown and everything. So that was nice that we, had a bit of time before we went into that lockdown. But then since she sort of came home, we had the full year where we couldn't really see anyone. She wasn't able to be sort of seen by grandparents and stuff. So that was a bit rubbish for us, really. And obviously, not being able to come in to see all the guys that I used to work with and stuff like that. So that was quite sad that I couldn't introduce her. And they still haven't met her yet either. So hopefully one day this year you will meet her. So I definitely think if I could do it over, I'd like to have that full year last year back again, just to really experience life of a little baby and going out and meeting people. So that's my answer, and I'd like to nominate Alexa for the next question, please.
So what are 3 things still left on your bucket list? Well, 3 things. Well, I wanted to, if some of you that might have attended events before, my daughter can often interrupt. She's 3 now. And for my sins, I would like to have another child, and I will be having one in July. So that's a big tick for my first thing. Other things, I'd like to get a lot more traveling in. Now, the last year has ruined my travel capabilities. And first on my list is Hawaii. I plan to go to LostCon 2020. I don't know if any of you know the TV show Lost, but I'm obsessed with it. And there was going to be a convention in Hawaii that I was really geared up to go to. And then obviously this pandemic happened. So yeah, that's definitely first on my list when we're allowed to travel around the world again. And then another thing is, well, working at a university, you can imagine I'm quite keen on education. I got my undergraduate at a different uni, but I got my master's here. And really, I'd like to do another master's, but in something completely different. My background's in marketing and advertising, things like that. I obviously work in business support now, but I'd quite like to understand more about counselling and psychodynamic counselling and stuff. So yeah, I think more education, maybe after the baby, we'll see, when my brain engages again. Yeah, but that'd be nice. Thanks. So I'll choose Christian.
Oh. You're on mute.
Great start, but yeah. So for me, a bit boring. I didn't really have a nickname as a kid. It was always permutations of my name: Christian, Chris, Christos, etc., etc. So not a big story, but on a positive note, I guess. With that, we can pass it on to someone else. So I shall pass it on to Hadil, and the question for you is, what was your favorite toy as a kid, Hadil?
I only kind of remember one toy that I actually still have from when I was a kid, and it was a little teddy bear. It was like a it was like a white teddy bear that my uncle got me on my brother's birthday because he didn't want me to be jealous that my brother had a new teddy bear and I didn't, which was really sweet. So I still keep it, and I think it doesn't have a name, which is kind of sad. But yeah, I think that's my favorite toy. Cool. And I nominate Juan.
So a question for Juan. When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up? Ooh, deep.
Yeah, probably that's a good one. Well, I am from Mexico. So when I was a kid, my mom usually used to tell me that, okay, you are going to be a mathematician when you grow up, because I was very good at math. And then I said, like, no, I don't want to do such a boring thing. And I end up being a mathematician and a data scientist. So I think she was quite right. Yeah, I love music. At some point I tried and I was starting to study music engineering, but it's not a very it's not a stuff that you get to study in Mexico quite easily. So yeah, I just said, like, okay, mathematics is good, and what I did. A very short story. So I will nominate Julia.
Hello. So a question for Julio. So that is, name one thing that drives you crazy.
That's a good one. One thing that drives me crazy
is surprise questions.
I mean, like, so it's not really a driving me crazy, but it's like I suppose an overlooming thing. Because like I come from Portugal myself, so I'm kind of used to having sunny days and like bright nights. So since being back in England, it's kind of like set in again that during the winter the sun sets at like 3 and it's like raining like 5 out of 7 days, and it's so gloomy all the time. sometimes like I wake up at 12 and then I have like 2 hours or 3 hours of solid sunlight, and then it goes down again, and it's just so depressing. I wouldn't call it driving me crazy, but it's definitely something that it's like a little annoyance that just persists. So
we all relate. Yeah. So who do you choose for the next question then?
I'll choose Benjamin for the next one.
So Benjamin, if you can, please do show your face to us. It's always nice to relate to you, especially on a networking event. I think that will work in your advantage. And the question for you is, if you had to teach someone one thing, what would you teach, Ben?
Oh wow. Right, I'll put my video on in a bit, but what would I teach? That's quite a tough question. Self-reliance, if that's teachable. So the idea that you don't have to depend on anyone to, you know, build skills and actually like get things done, I suppose. So yeah, that's what I would do.
Quite a tough one to teach, self-reliance, when someone relies on you to learn that skill, but yeah. I like it.
Yes, like, you know, could you help me out with this? Like now,
it's like no, and you have been taught self-reliance there.
Oh yeah, that's it. Okay, is there anyone else who hasn't been?
No, I think we've just lost Alexandra, so
might be connection problem, so we can move
probably
on.
Really well timed to go on to the first section, really, but that was good. It's given us an insight into everyone really quite quickly, which is great.
Yes, thanks everyone for participating. It's nice to find out a little bit more. So, okay, so the first section that we're going to discuss then is benefits of having a partner. So what we're going to sort of look at over these next few hours is sort of co-founder or partner we're talking about. So there may be some benefits to it, and obviously later on we're going to talk about possible pitfalls of that as well. But what I wanted to discuss first of all, so we've got our first slide you can go to, is different ways that having a partner can benefit you. So first of all, a really huge one I think here is saving you money. So you've got to think about this really in whenever you're partnering or you're setting up the business. First of all, it means a lot of the time that you may be splitting the costs. If you think right from at the start of a business and you're putting capital into the business, are you both going to then put in the same amount of money or possibly split it in a different way? Some people might do 50-50, 70-30, that sort of thing. But you're essentially, hopefully, always going to be looking at those business costs and thinking, how are we going to split these? So if you're working on your own, obviously everything solely relies on you. Financial burdens later on as well, not just the capital, but to sustain the business and keep it going throughout the however many years you are in business, you're going to constantly be coming up with new ways, obviously, to keep spending money throughout that business. And if you're splitting it, then that burden is taken off of you. That could also result in, you know, substantial savings elsewhere. So because you are splitting those costs, you think you might be able to save it on other aspects of the business, which could then mean you could actually put more into other areas of the business because you're not putting all your capital into one part of it. So basically, if the partnership already has those goods and services as well, you might find that you might get more connections through having a partnership as well. So if that person you're bringing on board has a lot of a network already, lots of connections, you may then be able to seek even further investment as well. So think about if your partner is already well known in an industry or a certain specific field that you bring them on board for, or you decide to partner up for. If they've got further connections in other areas, then you might think, well, we can also get investment from somebody else. So that is, again, saving you money because you're able to gain further investment into the business to proceed and to sort of grow that business. Also, you might think in terms of, depending on who that person is, you might have the ability to possibly borrow more money. So say if you did actually want a business loan, or potentially, like I said, investors, but actually seeking more money, that the right person that you've got there, you may find that they do give you that ability as well. And that partnership shows the professionalism, the strength within the business, so that you can actually hopefully get a little bit more there as well. You will find, if you're actually setting up as a partnership as well, that you don't actually have any additional taxes to pay. So if you think about if you were just set up as a sole trader, if you then set as a partnership, you're not necessarily going to incur any extra taxes like possibly with a limited company. You would still submit your own personal tax returns and then declare sort of your profits and losses, but there's no added tax essentially for the company to pay. So you would still submit those, and then how the tax returns work in a partnership is how it would usually work as if you were based as a sole trader. So kind of a lot more simple than the whole business. So that moves on to sort of another section. So if I can have the next slide come up, please. Another benefit of having a partner is gaining more time. So if you all think how you're all working in your businesses right now, and you know how much time you have to put into everything, you probably spend hours and hours thinking about certain aspects of business, and you're also studying at the same time. And you just think, this, obviously it's always going to be like that whenever you're starting a business. But if you're thinking about partnering, you can split the load of projects. So if you know that there's one aspect of the business that you're capable of and the other person is as well, you can split that load and not have the whole thing that you've got to do it all. So you could determine right from the start who's going to do this, who's going to do this. And just to make that a lot simpler for you is a time management thing as well, so that you are constantly not always work on the whole business. You can definitely split that load and make it easier. It's allocating your time to those specific areas. That is, with this thing, what we're saying about bringing in a partner, it might be that you are bringing them in for a certain expertise. So if you are, then you know that person is quite more than comfortable probably to work on that area alone. So like I've said just now, it's about defining those roles and responsibilities. You want to make the most of the time that you are working on that business. So make sure you're clearly setting out these goals. We've talked about it with some of you before about how you can look at your plan overall. Obviously, a lot of you might look at a full business plan, but you could always break it down into sort of your 30, 60 or 90-day plans to sort of give yourself a bit of an overview between the two of you, how you see this business working over the next 1, 2 and 3 months. So just clearly setting out those goals, how you want it, and what the next actions will be as well. Setting out the objectives of the company. So what do we think is going to happen in month 1, and how does that feed into the next couple of months as well? So it's really initially, you can always have, I think I'm going to talk about it a little bit later on, but a partnership agreement basically. It doesn't have to be a legal form, but you can just come up with an agreement between you at the beginning to split those roles, just to make it that bit easier. So as I've touched on this as well, just to go lead me into the next slide, which is about adding expertise. So you're thinking about what can you bring into your business that's going to bring extra skills, specializing in a certain area. You might have somebody that's a specialist in social media, marketing, financial expertise, anything where you think you need somebody to help you with this business. Or it might be that you're both aligned and you do have the same knowledge, but you just can work well together and you can both sort of split that. You might find that having somebody else as well, it will bring a new aspect into the business. So new ideas created, because whenever you're working with somebody else, you will find that you bounce off each other like that. So you might sit down and think, okay, I've thought about this idea, but then input from somebody else is always great, because then you can think of new ideas, collaborate on new things, and something maybe that you wouldn't have thought of before without somebody else's added input. So it is that expertise, but also just having somebody else to bounce off of is a really great way to come up with new ideas. It can also help you strengthen your own skills, I think. So I do work alongside Alexa within our business outside of the university, and I think our business, some of you may know or may not know already, so we work within the children's entertainment industry, and we are characters of Frozen for children's parties. So I think in that sense, for us, it's boosted and strengthened skills, because Alexa has a degree in drama and film studies, I think it was. And so she's got quite a broad background, and she's done sort of plays and amateur dramatics for probably like 15 years or maybe 20 years now, which my background, I didn't have that. So she has kind of strengthened my skills and my expertise to learn how to perform and how to actually act, essentially, which I didn't have any idea how to do that. So you might find that having that person come on board and teaching you things to help strengthen those skills really, really does help you. So you might also find as well, your credibility as a business can be boosted as well. So partnering, this might be more in terms of if you partnered with a company to do something. So not necessarily just a single person, but it might be a reputable company that already exists. They might be well known and have a much larger client base maybe than yourself. So that could help you grow your client base more. So just as an example, I would have thought everybody knows McDonald's and everybody knows Just Eat. And now you think about McDonald's has already had a huge client base. Just Eat does now, but obviously they haven't been around as long. And with McDonald's, they already had that, but they increased what they could offer massively by partnering with Just Eat. So what they used to offer, so a lot of you know, obviously it's dine in and take out, but they never used to offer delivery. So this might have sort of isolated or stopped a lot of people that didn't live nearby or something being able to get a McDonald's. So then McDonald's benefited from going onto the Just Eat platform, because then they were suddenly able to deliver and increase so many more customers that they've got. Not that they needed it, because obviously they've got billions of customers, but it's great for them anyway. And then also Just Eat would benefit because they're growing their client base. They're putting somebody onto their platform that is already so well known, and then they can in turn basically increase their customers that they have. So their growth of both businesses just by partnering together. So that's just an example of two well-known businesses already, but that's how it could work if you were looking to partner with somebody that's already well established in your area. And that then moves me on to the next slide, please, Christian, which is about growing that client base. So partnering can bring more clients with it, like I've just explained. If you're already with somebody that's established, they've got that existing client base, and it will help you expand the client base as well. So if there's more demand for that product, so then it gives you an advantage of partnering up, because you are then basically possibly doubling the amount of customers that you possibly could have reached before. I've got another example of our business as well. So this is how a real life example of something that Alexa and myself have done with our business. So like I said, we are performers for children's entertainment. There was a party that I attended, and there was another entertainer there. But what she offered was slightly different. So she offered the package of music and party games and just hosting a party. But we came in as the characters. We didn't work together, but after the party, she did actually contact us and said, how would you like to sort of partner up? And whenever I book a party, I will also advertise your services as these characters from Frozen, which we think, oh, that's fantastic, because we were able to collaborate. Whilst with us, we didn't actually come together as a full business. We still kept our business separate and she kept hers, but we sort of combined what we did to be able to work. And then she basically got more clients and customers because she could offer, oh, we've also got this Frozen experience. And then it also increased the amount of parties that we were able to attend, because she was actually really well established. She was very well known for her parties, hosting them, the entertainment, everybody loved her. So then for us to be able to get that really helped us. So it was a great opportunity. We could still maintain control over our business. That's one of the important things that we will talk about later on. Whenever you're partnering, it is about sort of you coming up with that ideal of how much you want to remain in control of your business, how much you would be willing to share, that sort of thing when splitting sort of any equity in the business. But this basically meant that we had more visibility, we've got more credibility working through somebody else that already was well established, and increasing the client base for us, thus increasing more profit. So it really worked for us. And that's just a little example of just us on a smaller scale. Obviously, we're not a huge entertainment company, but we are small scale. Unfortunately, I haven't got time for a huge one, but but it does work in certain aspects as well. So then, talking about that, we're gonna go into the next section, which is finding the right partner. So there's a few different things here that we're gonna cover. The first one is a merger or moocher, we're calling it. So basically, as I've already said, it is really important to find the partner that fits with you, someone that aligns with how you think, what your values are, what's the passion, what is your vision of your business for the future. You might find that you work with a friend, which is great because you've already got, that's something in common, you get on well together, and then you've come up with this idea and that you want to work on it together, which is great. Sometimes that can work, other times it doesn't, because your friendship and your business partnership should be separate. And it's sometimes you can clash and butt heads maybe over certain things. Luckily, me and Alexa have never done that. Well, not yet. So it just all depends on how you both work and how your goals align. So that's something to set out right from the start. Whenever you're looking at discussing this with somebody, does that person gel with you, basically? Don't just look for that partner for any reason. Don't just think, oh, I really need someone to help me get more customers, or just because they're doing something that I'm not, I need them. It doesn't necessarily mean you do need somebody, because you might be able to do things yourself, or you might just be thinking, oh, I should have a partner because I do need somebody that does the marketing stuff, or somebody that's like does the secretarial stuff, or whatever. It just because other possible companies might have that, it doesn't mean that you definitely need that. It is really finding out about you, how you want to run this business, and what suits you and what fits you. So making sure, basically, this partnership, so what they offer, you don't want anybody that's going to hinder you, basically. Obviously, you don't want that. You want to be able to divide your work equally and be able to share it between the different strengths. So you don't want, sort of, if you find right from the beginning that anybody's coming on board and they may be making your life harder because you're partnering with them, obviously that's not the ideal. You don't want to find that you're constantly having to chase them or ask them, oh, can you do this, can you do that, have you, that sort of thing. It is always about making sure that you're dividing that work either equally, or you're happy that you're going to take on 70% of the work and the other person's going to do the 30%. So it's just working to your strengths, again, just thinking about how that person can fit in with you, basically. As I mentioned before, you've got to think about if it's personally or professionally driven as well, keeping those two aspects separate if you are working with somebody you already know. So we kind of already covered that bit, so I'm just going to move on to the next bit, which is setting out the goals and objectives that you would do. So if you've both got the same vision for the business and you see it heading in the same direction, then you can set out those goals and objectives from the start. Like we said, there could be your 30-day to 90-day plans. You can have the partnership agreement, anything like that. You could also set out your own time management goals yourself, so what you want to achieve yourself personally within those first 3 months of the business. Obviously, forecasting, people can do that up to sort of 3 years as well, so you can see what those outcomes might be for you financially, but also sort of the output that is there. What is that return on your investment as well? So is it working? Whatever you're putting out there, is it worth it? So you need to make sure you're setting those realistic goals and objectives that you want to achieve individually, like I said, and as a partnership. So some of you may have already heard of the SMART goals. So you're looking at these goals, specific, are they measurable, achievable, are they realistic, like I said, and time bound. So it's really, if you follow something like the SMART objectives, then it is quite a good method to use to sort of see how those objectives are going to work and if it does work for your business. So let's go on to, we've got the next section. So that is protecting data and IP. So when working with a partner, you will find that obviously you may both have different ideas. You both have that intellectual property that you want to protect. And bringing on board a partner does mean you will be sharing, collaborating on those ideas, which is fine. But again, it's sort of making sure that you are protecting that. If you're working on new projects together, but if you're working sort of, you need to work harmoniously, I'd say, to make sure that you agree on your ideas and that they contribute well to the business. With certain things like this, if you have got your own ideas that you do want to protect, you can do that with sort of non-disclosure agreements. You could both sign something to say basically you wouldn't be disclosing any of these new ideas with anybody else. Also known as maybe a confidentiality agreement, if you want to keep all those ideas within the business. Technically though, if you have come up with that idea, so if you've created or developed it, you can protect. So you can protect it yourself. So you've come up with that. So because obviously you both might come up with different ideas as well. So whoever created it, basically, it belongs to that person. If you're working collaboratively, then you have that IP protection together. But I would always make sure that you are just protecting those ideas, because like we said, there will be pitfalls we'll discuss later on, but you're not always sure when you're working in partnerships as to how well that idea or anything is protected. Basically, you can also look at different software, IT programs, cloud devices, stuff like that can keep information safe. So it depends how you want to keep it safe. Some people might log evidence in recording their ideas and the development of those ideas as well. So it's just about keeping that safe any way you feel the best you can, really. So I'm just going to discuss with you a little bit more in detail about the different ways that you can protect IP. So you've got a few different ways. You've probably all heard of them. You can use copyright, trademarking, or patents. So you basically would you can use these later on, not necessarily right in the beginning of the starting out or development of the business, but later on if you're feeling like you need a little bit more protection about these ideas. It depends which one suits you most, depending on what you're doing. So we just have a brief chat about all of them. So you've got your patents, which basically you're looking at, they give you a right basically to exclude other people from manufacturing or marketing tangible things. So it might be that you've invented something or a way of something doing a certain thing, and that it then stops other people from using the way that product is either made or used, or how that product actually works. So you can put a patent on it. And once you hold that, you can apply to license your product. Patents can last for 20 years. I do believe that you have to get them renewed. Patents also can be a little bit more on the expensive side. I haven't actually got a costing for it here, but that's something you want to think about. If what you've got is that actually a tangible asset that needs a patent on it or not? So have a think about what you're actually offering. You've got things like trademarks as well. So trademarks can be anything from the name of your company, a phrase that you use. So say like Nike, for example, was like, just do it. You could trademark that. Sounds, symbols that are used, anything that associates with your service or product. So that you can connect it with a brand, and then that's how your company would build that reputation over the years. There's a lot of brands you can probably think of off the top of your head where oh, they have that phrase. Or like Tesco, like every little helps, stuff like that. So little slogans and stuff, that's where you could trademark those certain aspects of the business. Trademark protection lasts for about 10 years after you've registered it, and that can be renewed as well. And then the final thing was the copyright. So this protects written or artistic expressions. So again, you might see this quite a lot when people discuss sort of songs or films or books, stuff like that. Anything like that could be copyrighted, and it protects that expression of an idea, but not the idea itself. So it's that it may be, so basically, if you copyrighted work that has to reproduce it. So if you wrote a book and then they had a movie based on that book, you could sell it or perform it, display it to the public, that sort of thing. So you don't, the material itself, I think you can extract that, and that could be copyrighted. So yeah, it's kind of the copyrights of those things. Also, you can, so say if it was a book, a copyright would last as long as the author is still alive, but plus another 50 years. So copyrights actually last a lot longer than anything else. I hope that's given you a little bit of an idea on how you can protect IP. Obviously, you can look into this in a lot more in depth. You can look up a lot of this online if you're not sure what's right for you, or always discuss that with one of us later on as well. Okay, so if we could just move on to our next slide then. So the last little bit in this section is your return on investment, ROIs. I briefly touched on it earlier. So when you're looking at the partnership, so there's different things you could have for ROIs. It's not just necessarily all financial, but if you're looking at this within a partnership, a brief breakdown of it would be, it is the ratio between your net income and an investment as a performance measure. So the return on investment can be used to evaluate the efficiency of the investment or to compare efficiency. So basically you could, if you're in a partnership and you've got your equity, you can divide that equity by the partner's net income, so after your taxes, through the partnership, and the average partner equity is calculated by adding the beginning and ending equity accounts together and dividing it by 2. So basically you've got the beginning and the end of your equity account. So that you'd see a return, if you would see a return on investment, that would be by calculating yours and your partner's equity in the business and dividing it by 2, basically. So you're going to see, possibly, is that capital that you've put in giving you a return, or anything else that you've used throughout the time in that business. So anything that you've bought, is the equipment working how it should be? Is the marketing and advertising worth the money that you're putting into it? Are you getting a return on it? You could forecast this. I did mention it earlier slightly about how you could possibly do a financial forecast for the next sort of 3 years, looking at potential of how much something would cost you and how much you would get on return in that. Obviously, again, that is just forecasting, and it's just seeing a possibility of what could happen. But then that is something that's also measurable over time. So you could put that money into something, and then if your plan is, I want to see at the end of this financial year, has it made me a good return? Then you can see if it is worth what you're doing. So I would say as well, it doesn't matter how small businesses are, it's important to sort of consider those future decisions. So there are a few areas I was just going to note down that you could think about when looking at return on investment. So like I said, not just necessarily financially, how much money have you put in, how much you're getting out of it. You can also look at things like purchasing of new equipment. So if you purchase some new equipment, you want to make sure basically that you are purchasing the right equipment that is going to work for you to get that return. So if you spent £2,000 on a new computer, was that £2,000 worth it basically? Is it getting you what you need? Are you being able to sort of create software? Have you created an app from it? Stuff like that. You could look at this later on when you're building on the business, but you possibly might look at hiring new employees as well. So that could also be something to look at on a return on investment. Are they going to increase or decrease profits for you? So bringing somebody new on board, that could potentially help the business because it's, again, saving you time. You might bring somebody in that's got a certain expertise that's going to help you, but then you also got to think they're going to have a salary as well. So you've got to weigh up the ideas there. Is bringing somebody on board actually going to increase your profits because actually the value that they bring to the team is worth it? Or are they not bringing enough value for the amount of money you're paying them? So it's a point to think about as well. And then marketing strategies, because we'll all have them, and that's something that you're going to continually use throughout the time you've got a business. So this is one that we would look at quite in depth, I would say. Is your profitability of your marketing strategy working? Does it bring business into you? Have you decided on when you're going to review it? Again, like I said, it could be the end of the financial year, or you could have something in place for a few months, see the review on that. You could look at statistics of it. If you're marketing online and you're using social media channels, there's quite a lot where you can find statistics and things like that, where you can see the data of how many clicks you've had on something, how many people have visited your website, for example, how many people have bought something, you know, that sort of thing. So it's kind of looking at that and deciding whether that marketing strategy is working for you, and are you getting a return on how, if you're spending £2,000 a month, say, on marketing, is it worth what you're spending? So it'll help you make an informed decision on your next purchase and your next strategy. So it's always thinking about that next step with something like this. So that's kind of the last little bit in the section I want to talk about at the moment. And then I'm going to hand over to Alexa, who's going to talk to you about our breakout. Oh, sorry, actually, no, sorry, we've got a break first.
No, we have decided to do the breakout session first, actually, sorry.
Okay, Alexa will explain to you our breakout session then, which is coming up now, okay?
Yeah, so some of the things, thanks, Lauren. Some of the things that came up in that was about how well you get on with people and what their values might be and what your values might be and how might they be aligned. So I thought a fun little breakout session to do to start with was this really simple personality test I found online. So I'm just going to put the link in the chat now. What we'll do is just split you in half and put you in breakout rooms. And I think if you spend, it says it takes roughly 10 to 15 minutes. So if you take about 10 to 15 minutes, just filling in your test with your completely honest answers, because we can only get anywhere if we're honest with ourselves. And then in your breakout sessions, just have a little discussion about what's come out, what the results are, what categories do you find yourself falling into, what are your strengths, and maybe what are you not as strong at, things like that. And then after about 15 minutes, we'll bring you back into the main session and we can all have a look and see how you got on. And I'd be interested to see how Lauren and Christian's tests come out. As we've never actually worked in the same building with each other, this might be really revealing. So yeah, I'll put the link in the chat. So just grab the link. Christian's going to pop you into some breakout rooms and then we'll see you back here in about 15 minutes.
Yep, so just one more thing, Alexa, how long do you want the breakout rooms open for? So I'm making 2 breakout rooms. How long do you want them open for?
If you do them for 15 minutes, then we can come back in here and have a little chat about what we've found.
Cool. You and Lauren all need to clamber out of the breakout rooms. I'm doing this automatically and it's just throwing you in there. So
that's fine.
Yeah, cool. All right, opening. I hope everyone is ready.
Thank you.
And away with you all.
So, yeah, so let's carry on with understanding 5 key things that you should know about choosing your business partner. So before we set out to look for the right partner, what are the kind of things that we should know when we're choosing one? And maybe more importantly, like what kind of questions should we be asking ourselves about what we are looking for in a business partner? So number 1, as I've got here, is experience. So that can be experience in your market, your particular product or service, or even with your target customer base. Experience in any element of this business should be essential for what you are looking for in a partner. Partners are there to work with you and not for you. So you want to be sure that the person you partner with has enough of this experience in any of these sections for them to be able to perform the role without your constant input or oversight, because the point is to relieve some of your work to pass on to somebody else. It doesn't really save you much time if you're having to show them how to do everything and all the tasks that are set to them. So yeah, you want somebody with experience in at least one of these areas. And ideally they'll know how to run the business. So they can cover the bases in times of emergency, just in case you can't get to the office or you can't make it onto your Zoom that day. So what type of experience do you want your partner to have is something that you should really consider. Would you like it if they've got previous professional experience in a partnership, or would you prefer it that this is their first co-endeavor? Also, what level of expertise are you expecting them to bring to the table? Are you okay if they're at a foundation level, or would you like them more advanced? And then is there a specific type of experience that you want them to have? So maybe you've got experience in all of these sections, but it's just this area that you're struggling with. So bringing in somebody with that experience will really help benefit and fill the gaps that you might find that you're missing. And then maybe you want an understanding of the minimum amount of time that they might have spent in that industry. That might be important to you. You might want someone with 5 years knowledge, similar to how you might interview somebody as an employee. Do you want them to have experience, and have in your mind the kind of experience you'd like them to have, and maybe how long they've had to gain that experience? Because professional collaboration can certainly be an asset in many ways, but you need to ensure that your potential partnership meets all of these needs when it comes to running your business. So the next trait we will be looking for on the next slide is creativity. So an essential element to ensuring your business lasts a distance is definitely creativity. Consistently creating new and innovative ideas to help boost your business to the next level. Your main aim for any business is to stand out from the crowd, and to continue to do so by moving with the flow of the environment that you find yourself in. Whether this is your market experiences certain changes, or maybe the technology around you gets adjusted or upgraded, you want to make sure you're always on the lookout to inject some creativity into your business to stop people looking for something better than what it is that you offer. So just keeping up with the times. So what you need to think ultimately is, if your partner isn't the creative type, are you okay with that? Obviously, you can be okay with that. You may find yourself hiring someone else for creative input or brainstorming ideas rather than just doing it on your own. So the point of a partnership is to try and split the effort in half. And if your partner isn't pulling their weight in a certain area that you want, then it's probably not worth partnering with them. So find a partner who challenges you, someone that brings out the creative side of you and you for them. Not only should their personality complement yours, like we've seen previously, but they should feel motivated enough to bring you new ideas, bring more ideas to the table, and really push the company further alongside you. So the next section is skill set. On the next slide, please. Many people will tend to focus on the hard skills when it comes to understanding how someone may best fit into their business or workplace, but these are only some of the necessary elements. Soft skills are just as essential to succeed in today's economy, where there are far too many options available for everyone. So hard skills can cover areas such as learning a new language, qualifications and certificates, administrative techniques, software knowledge, and many more things. And then soft skills are more like the character traits that we've maybe just looked at, and other behavioral qualities such as communication skills, the ability to lead, critical thinking, teamwork and flexibility. So most importantly, what we think about when we think about the hard skills and soft skills, if we move on to the next slide, is in order to be a well-rounded professional in business, it's really beneficial to have a balance of these hard and soft skills at your disposal, whether you're bringing one half and they're bringing the other half. The role you're looking for your partner to fill may not only require the basic experience and expertise to perform their job well, but also the necessity to be good with people and to be able to lead a team. So it might not just be the technical aspects that you're on the lookout for. In all of this, communication is paramount when you're looking for a partner and when you're working with a partner. So anyone that excels in the communication skills area is sure to be an asset to your team, because it can only work well for you. Basically, you want a good relationship with your partner. So having those interpersonal skills as well as those specific technical skills could be really crucial in working effectively and harmoniously together. So if we move on to the next slide, the next skill is vision. Lauren touched on this a bit before. So vision is a key area when considering your co-founder or your partner, as this vision needs to be shared by all parties. You want to make sure everyone is on the same page, basically, in order for you to reach your goals more efficiently and successfully. If everyone is working towards the same vision, then the goals you can set out for each other can be set and achieved much more easily. If you think about it, you can't possibly work cohesively with someone that doesn't share your vision and your ultimate end game, and they're not striving for the same results as you. That's just going to cause trouble. So you want every part of your business to run as smoothly as possible, and having your partner completely on board is essential to reaching the outcome that you desire ultimately. And then finally, on the next slide is reliability. So another very important factor to consider is how reliable is your partner? Are they able to make essential decisions on your behalf if you're not there? Can they conduct the everyday business? Can they manage your team if you need them to? Can you ensure that they meet deadlines without your input? Things like that. We said earlier about how they're there to work with you and not for you. So can they continue with your workload without your oversight? So the key here is finding someone to work with that you can fully rely on. Otherwise, partnering doesn't really hold that much benefit to you. So we all know being an entrepreneur requires time, effort, focus, and quite a lot of hard work. So if you feel like you can't trust the person in question or rely on them to look after your interests, then it's time to probably consider somebody else. So what you want to do is make sure the person you choose to work with is really instrumental in helping you to run your business smoothly and successfully. Although your relationship will be partly based on chemistry, as we've said before, the focus should really be on finding someone who brings in these new ideas, shares your vision, and helps you boost that creativity. Okay, so now we're going to look at, we've briefly discussed the 5 areas of partnership traits. So now we're just going to quickly look at the importance or maybe the relevance of keeping your connections close and local. So when we think about partnerships, partnerships are something big brands can do really well, and ultimately they both benefit from. So in this example, I was thinking of GoPro and Red Bull. They came together over their shared values of a particular lifestyle. So that lifestyle is one that's usually packed with action and adventure. It's pretty extreme and sometimes can be quite fearless in some aspects of it. So it really is, or is in an ideal relationship to move into the world of co-branding for them. And they're not the only big brands doing it. There's other examples. I think it's Nike and Apple have just hooked up so you can get some sort of running app through your watch. And what this shows with these big brands joining forces is that if you partner up in the right way, it can be extremely beneficial to everyone involved, not just you. So think about the avenues it could open up to partner up with another local business, for example, something that complements your business. You'd not only be boosting your brand, but you'd be boosting your connection with that local community, and quite importantly, a little to no cost, really. So aligning yourself with another business can offer you benefits such as collaborative marketing campaigns or joint PR events. You're making each other a stronger brand in doing so. You're saving money, and ultimately, you're being able to tap into this new market that you might not have had access to and building trust there. So the first step is in this approach is to find a business that complements yours. But before you take that plunge, you need to fully understand why it is you are partnering. So I'm just going to go over a few reasons of why you might think it's the best way forward for your business in particular. So if we go on to the next slide, our first reason is you can build trust by association. So there are plenty of challenges facing you as you begin to build your own brand, especially in a market that may already have heavy competition. or you might find yourself operating in a small and possibly saturated community maybe. So partnering up with someone else in that market or community gives you the opportunity to exploit their existing brand equity. So if you're seen to be working with someone who has already got a solid standing in your particular area or market, then you're more likely to gain that trust by association from any new potential customers that come along. They may not particularly know you or your business that well yet, but they know this company already and they already trust them. So you being aligned with them can only be beneficial to you, as you will then be able to reap the rewards of their trust by gaining that trust from those consumers yourself quite easily, just by being aligned with this particular business or brand. So if you find yourself in this position where one brand might be stronger than the other, all that's important here is to be sure to be clear about what you hope to achieve from this relationship. You can set goals, set milestones, and be ready to reciprocate in areas that you can reciprocate in. And this will help you in, well, maintaining a balance in your relationship. Both parties need to be fully aware of the outcomes that they're aiming for to ensure that they work in unison to reach these goals that you've set out and to ultimately be beneficial to one another. So if we move on to the next slide, it's also important you can use your partnership to foster creativity and innovation. So what you find is many small business owners will encounter similar challenges along the way and possible pitfalls, unfortunately, throughout their startup journey. And you can often, if you're working by yourself or in a really small team, you can quite often fall into this repetitive routine where you're discussing the same big picture ideas over and over just to make sure it's established with yourself. So this is whether you're working alone or whether you're talking to your mentor. You can find that this behavior can become quite repetitive. So bringing in someone from outside your business can help shed new light on your startup. It gives it a fresh eyes, if you will, and is a great way to generate this new thinking and new ideas, as well as providing some maybe backup courage to maybe take a risk on an idea that could really push your business to the next level. So what we need to remember as well is that these partnerships can be both short and long term. That's all depending on your requirements. And you can take turns hosting things like brainstorming sessions and then other idea generation activities. And you may even go to the lengths of arranging things like we've done before, mastermind sessions for your team. This will allow you all to really get stuck into some new territory of innovation with all these new minds coming together. So these meetups can also provide you with some accountability, which I always like. Write down an action, got to make sure I tick it off my list. As what you'll find is in any follow-up meetings, if you've been assigned a task, people may ask you to follow up on what you found or how you've explored your idea or initiative that we talked about in the previous meeting. So again, it sets you that individual personal accountability goal to be able to report or feedback at your next meeting. With that in mind, it keeps you focused on your goals in general. And it's a great way to think through any problems you may have encountered by having a partner to hash these ideas out with and talk about this. It's about having a sounding board as well, so you can really get your ideas out there and have a back and forth with someone instead of possibly just having a back and forth with yourself if you're building your business alone. So it's always really nice to share these ideas, but what I find as well, just the little things can really help. So it's getting that pat on the back from someone else when you've really done well and achieved a goal, and someone's rooting for you basically and spurring you on to the next milestone that you want to achieve. And finally, if we move on to the next slide, getting more marketing bang for your buck. So that, I don't know if that's a global saying, it's something that we say, get a bit more bang for your buck. When it comes to partnerships, one of the most beneficial types is where people team up for specific marketing purposes. So marketing in various forms could set you back quite a bit in terms of budget, for example. But when you're partnering up with someone else because of these marketing activities, you're splitting that cost with your partner. And this can definitely help lighten the load for you and for them. So not only are you getting an input in the cash flow area, you also get this additional bonus of exposure to a new audience that you may not have been able to penetrate prior to this relationship. So you've got this other person on board. Not only are they splitting the cost with you, you get the bonus of advertising to their clientele and vice versa for them. So teaming up ultimately can often halve the workload and double the outcome for you. So that is true for everyone involved. And just a few ways for you to do it are through things like dual product and service launch events. You could collaborate on creating the product itself. You could offer some sort of referral program. So if you sign up with this link from this company, you get this discount. If you mention our sister company, you'll get that discount. You could possibly co-host community events. You could co-sponsor a charity event possibly. And then there's partnerships and partnering up for general email and social promotion as well. So when we think about co-managing anything to do with your business, what we need to be sure of is to represent both brands equally if it is a co-branding opportunity, because this will avoid any uncomfortable conversations going forward and ensure you meet, quite importantly, all the data compliance regulations when considering the processing of the data held by other parties. So that's a really important factor to explore more if you are reaching out to this business's clientele, to be sure that you are using their data in a way that you've agreed to. As many of you may know, you may not know, GDPR is quite stringent these days. So ensuring that you're up on the various aspects of that is really important when you're joining in a partnership. So a good point is you can create a soft schedule maybe of activity that you're both aware of and you can both be working on when content is being shared, and how much money may be spent to promote one another. So keeping on top of all of these things is really important as well, just to make sure that balance is maintained throughout your partnership. And one key point is to make sure you get everything written down. Lauren talked earlier about partnership agreements and things like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be completely formal through a lawyer. It can be just having things written down so everyone is aware of what is expected of them, how they are adding to the partnership going forward, just to avoid any cause for confusion. And also, like we touched on just a minute ago, is holding each other accountable. That's not a bad thing. Holding people accountable for their actions that you have agreed to take part in can be motivating. Like I said earlier, I am happy to receive a to-do list of actions, as long as I'm fully aware of what is expected of me, the time scale I am expected to get these things done in, then I am happy to be held accountable to that and report back and feedback on that. So yeah, the majority of this is to just be clear with exactly what you want, how you're going to break it down, and what is expected from you ultimately to move forward. So that's that bit. And now I think Lauren is going to take over and just cover briefly some of the pitfalls of partnering, which are equally important to consider when thinking about working alongside somebody.
Thanks for that, Alex. That was really good. So this section basically, so far we've discussed about how a co-founder or a partner can benefit us, and there are a lot of ways that they can, and they can really help grow our business, grow the profitability of the business, scale, everything like that, visibility. But there are also things that we want you to consider that could not be so great. So there are pitfalls of having a partnership as well. The first section here is reliability, and Alexa has actually pretty much explained it in her last section actually. So we might sort of gloss over this. Bear with me 1 second. I think she did basically say it all right. Basically, it is a lot about trust.
Reliability is very important.
Yeah, we're just going to hammer this in. Reliability is so important. Because of that partnership, you want to make sure it's right for you. We've spoken about this already, making sure your values align, everything you do together, you want to be able to trust it. And I actually came across a nice little saying, if you think about partnership like a marriage, it's basically being able to trust each other and enjoy working together. So there isn't that, you know, that dread that you go to work and think, oh, I really can't stand working with this person, or I just don't, you know, I just don't feel like we are getting along. We're not really coming together and aligning, you know, our vision together. So just think of it like that. A good marriage should work well together. Yeah, you've pretty much touched on most of it. I'm going to we'll skip to the next slide just so we're not repeating ourselves. So the pitfalls of the money aspect of things. So as I said right back at the beginning, it was talking about considering how much money you might put into the business as a capital stake. So making sure that you are either, you know, putting in an equal share, but not necessarily everybody does that. You will always find that somebody else might put in that bit more, because unless you've come up with that idea, say, together, and you are pretty much, that is 50-50. When you guys at the moment are probably all working on your business ideas on your own, that if somebody then comes into it, they probably wouldn't expect to be, okay, here's 50% of the share to come into this. So you just got to think about, if somebody is putting that into the business, you just want to be careful of what they're putting in and what they would expect to get out of it if they're putting in a certain amount of money. So also being aware of future spending, which we keep talking about, but there's always going to be costs in a business. You have obviously that initial outlay, but there's always going to be ongoing costs. There will be fixed costs and there will be variable costs depending on what happens over the period of time that you have a business. So it's just being very aware of that capital. There is something that you can put into place. So if, say, you do partner and you're the only one that's putting in the capital as well, so that could also be a scenario. You could put in something, you can put in sort of like an associates agreement, for example. So it could be a contract. This, again, you don't always have to go through a legal avenue of it, but something, maybe if it is to do with the monetary side of the business, you might be worth, if you did speak to somebody, to put a contract into place, like a lawyer or something, to get an official document. So basically what this is it can be a written agreement for both parties that basically specify what each of your responsibilities are. So maybe responsibilities within the business, how much you're responsible for, as in putting in that money, also future spending, things like that. It will outline that relationship of the two parties, but it can also protect you as well. So if somebody was in breach of some aspect of business, so say you did put in all your capital and then that person went, oh, lovely, I'm going to take that and go off and go on holiday or something like that. You know, it's always good to have that agreement in place, because it will protect you if your partner or the other party did decide to breach your contract. So it's always, especially when it comes to monetary terms, always wise to have something in place. Even though we've said before, you may completely trust the person you're partnering with, maybe a best friend, something like that. You just never know of these eventualities. So it's always good to be careful with that. Another thing that I kind of mentioned a bit earlier, don't just look for a partner just because you feel like you need to have a partner. Or say if at the moment you don't have any funds and you're like, I just really need someone to come into this to help me because I don't have the funds to complete the research I need, or I can't make this certain app that I want, so I have to get somebody on board. That is where you need to be aware of, I would say, of any bringing someone into the business and then giving them a chunk of the business, like an equity stake or shares in the business or something like that, just because they can offer the money. You find this obviously with, you watch stuff like Dragon's Den, and they'll invest in so much because that person really needs the money, but they then obviously take a share of equity within the business. If you feel like that is your only option and you need somebody to invest, but also those people at a higher level that are investing a lot of money would tend to also have that expertise and knowledge behind them, so they're going to help you. But if it is just, you know, somebody that isn't necessarily that high level dragon sort of character, then you want to be careful about that financial aspect. So I would suggest, this is maybe something, if you do need somebody to come into the business to help you with something, I would look at more, not necessarily getting them to take a share in it, but maybe just contracting somebody in to do some work. So if you're really stuck on a certain aspect, you would get them in to work on that project for a certain length of time, and then that's it, and then they go off. So they're not taking any share of the business, they're not sort of sharing in the profit, stuff like that. You would literally be contracting them in to do that. Also, again, if you can't afford to actually employ somebody, same with employment though, you would be employing that person. I wouldn't, some people have asked, I think, questions before where they've said, oh, well, how much, you know, would you give them shares? That is something you can do later on with a large scale business. Your employees can buy shares within the business, but when you're starting out like this, it would literally just be a normal employee contract. So I wouldn't even look at stuff like that in the beginning. This leads me on nicely to the next slide, which is your terms. So you possibly could encounter problems with a relationship. Doesn't mean you always will, but if there are any problems and there's no prior written agreements, you could possibly dislike something that your partner's doing. You might not like that certain things aren't shared equally, decisions about the business. So if you're bringing on someone and you've had a complete you know, an idea in your head, and then they come in and say, well, I think we need to change this, this, and this, and they're completely changing what you had as your ideal for the business. That's something that you need to be aware of and share your thoughts equally. And also how, again, profits are made. So what is that split there? With how you work together as well, I mentioned it about how often you work on the business. So you might work 3 days a week, the other person works 6 days a week on the business. Again, making sure that is stipulated and that you are agreeing to this. So those terms need to be agreed right from the start. You can cover this, you can look into it a bit more in depth for the, you can find the Partnership Act. I think a lot of stuff is on gov.co.uk, so you can look into that a little bit more in depth as well as to what that covers. But there are, if you have a written partnership agreement, I'm just going to talk you through a couple of important areas that you should consider if you're looking to partner, so that you are aware of this and that you can make sure you don't sort of have any issues later on down the line. So say if there was just 2 of you partnering to start with, what if later on you decided that you want to bring on a third party? And that, you know, you can have that. You can have partnerships. It doesn't necessarily mean there's just the 2 of you. So these are the sort of things that you should write into a partnership agreement. So how are you going to do that? What does it look like? Are you both quite happy to take on a third person, a fourth person? For, you know, how many are you looking to do that, and how do you think that might happen? Also, looking at how the assets and the capital is brought into the partnership. So I have just talked about this, but it could be to do with premises as well, not just financial, not just cash assets. So if you own premises and you want to just make sure how they are owned. So is that owned by one person? Is that going to actually still be owned by that one person? Or is it going to be then split because that is the business premises, for example? So again, thinking about that within a partnership agreement. Also looking at how you were both paid, or however many you're in it are paid, and how those profits are divided. So like I mentioned earlier, you would usually complete your sort of tax returns as if you were sort of a sole trader, do them individually. There's no extra added business tax there. But you might also, if you wanted to, and some people would take sort of their, have their gross profits and then have the net, but then also look at taking a dividend from the company and maybe a salary. So you could look at what your salaries may be for both of you and agree on that as well. Another important part to add into any agreement is your day-to-day management of the business. So who is managing what aspect of the business? There are some other parts as well, which we're going to touch on now, which are around things like retirement and like an exit strategy. So those sort of things are things to consider as well. So what does it look like for you? Have you got an idea in mind, sort of, if yes, Christian, I just saw your comment, sorry. Yeah, if you've got an idea in mind of when you may look for a retirement for the company, and looking at how you could exit from this. So would one of you exit first and buy out the other one, or share the profits of the company, that sort of thing? So or would they completely be removed from the partnership and the process? So it's always thinking of the future, even though you may only just be starting on a business, an exit strategy when you're in a partnership is a really important thing to think about as well. Christian wants to come in with something quickly, I think.
Yeah, so just to highlight some of the stuff that Alexa and Lauren has said, we have several students who started their businesses and who created teams within here. And actually, some of the best ones I've seen are the ones who found co-founders and the ones that worked with other people, in that you see that those people tend to move the fastest when you have more people working on your idea. It's just so much easier. Trust me, I'm trying to find some people for my business because I'm trying to trail it. But again, with a lot of this stuff, with terms and conditions, with getting people on board and working out how that relationship is going to look like, it's really complicated in that it all has its positives and negatives. Just to give you an example, one of those really good businesses that I've seen work out, the guy created a team. The company itself has a sustainable mission. They want to do good for the world. So it's a very good mission, a mission that a lot of people obviously join in with. And in exchange for essentially working with him, he gives his team a section of the business, so they all have a stake in the business. Now, I think when you bring people in, again, a very successful means of bringing someone in, but in the end of the day, again, you have to make it clear for them that they're not necessarily working for money yet, that those percentages of the company, they will sit there, and for the time being, whilst the company develops, they're no more than essentially Disney bucks. They don't have any value until you put the value into them. But it's really interesting. What I encourage you all to do is I encourage you to get involved with Essex startups even more after the lockdown and meet those other co-founders, because it's absolutely fascinating how some of them went around there. They created teams, they distributed shares, and now they work together on those ideas. It's really cool. And I think for a lot of you, especially when you're looking for co-founders, you can take those ideas on board and essentially use them in your business. And I think you can learn a lot from their mistakes, because I've seen certain things go wrong as well. So definitely do that. It's quite spectacular.
Cool. Thank you. So yeah, I was at the end of that bit anyway. So we're just going to move on to the next slide. So you're looking at percentage of equity, again, within the business. So again, it might sound like I'm just repeating myself with certain things, but it's making sure that you're looking at a clear written document, again, to make sure you are happy with the split of the business. The amount of partners that are in the business and how much equity they do each own of that business. So you have to be very comfortable with how much of your business you may be willing to share the equity on, especially if you are sort of the founder of the business and bringing somebody else on board. It was very rare, I would say, where people would just split it 50-50 as well. So you can basically determine it by working out the value of your business. So you want to not only determine the value of potentially like what your business is valued at, but the value that a partner brings to that business as well. So basically what we would talk about is any partners that you have maybe might have between like 5 and 20% of equity in the business, depending on their level of importance. So again, what are they bringing to you? How much do you actually need? What connections have they got, experience, etc., everything like that. So then that could be something that you think about yourself. Between that sort of level, you might think, I would say 20% is probably a top end for if you're letting someone take that share in the business. Again, making sure both of you are aligned with this right at the start, making sure when you want to go ahead, you wouldn't just sort of say, I don't have 50% of my company, and then you get to make the decisions as well, because that basically would what would happen. They would be able to make decisions and not necessarily that are right for you. So it's just being aware of that within the company. It's quite a brief part there really to discuss. And then on to the next bit again, which is very important. Again, agreeing your outcomes and timescales. Decide on what's the most important thing that you're looking at in the first year, I would say. You can look further ahead, but I think if you just want to look at how your first year looks with a partner, it is agreeing how you see the business scaling, I would say, within that year, and what outcomes do you expect, what actions do you need to take to get those outcomes as well. So it's just making sure that, again, because we're talking about pitfalls, it is just, you just need to be aware of these things when you're working with somebody else, that their actions are complementary to the business and improving it in the sense that you are going to scale and it's going to be viable, you're going to make money from it. Also, you want to make sure, I would say, with these agreed outcomes and any timescales, that you are working in that manner where you can manage your time, not just having to write it down like that, but the other person is able to self-manage, because any delays in, say, production of equipment that you've got, or if it's an app or an online service, it's marketing campaigns, it's updating of software, everything like that, anything where the process of the business has to run smoothly. If you're both thinking different things, different wavelengths, you don't work together well, you're not going to achieve those agreed outcomes. The timescales are going to be off. You're not going to be able to do what you had imagined in the beginning, really. So they're just a few areas I would definitely consider. Not saying that every single person that you partner with is you're going to have these areas, but just to work in a professional manner, I would definitely, after this, if you're thinking about it and you've chatted to people, take a look at some of the agreement procedures that I've said, you know, your partnership agreement, associates agreement, things like that, your non-disclosure agreements, all those sorts of things that are just very, I would say, important to look at, because you really just want to make sure that you have these things in place, even if they're not needed. It might be completely, you might think, oh, that's very formal sort of thing to do, but it's just good practice, basically. So that's just the things I would suggest. So I think that's sort of the section, that's what I wanted to say on that. I think we're going to have a quick 5 minutes, 5
cool. Again, I thought we could go straight into the breakout session, because it's only going to be about 20 minutes for the breakout session, and then we'll grab a quick break after that, if that's okay with everyone.
Okay, fine, brilliant. So we're going to go on to the breakout session first, and hopefully you're all okay with that, without a quick break. But this one's going to be really fun and get you all involved and talking to each other as well. So earlier today, I did email everybody. Did you all get an email with an attachment that said about a moon landing task? I've got a few nods, thumbs up. Yes, from Krishna. Anybody that hasn't got it, just let me know. Yeah, got it, cool. Okay, so what we're going to do then, I'm just going to bring this up. So you would have all seen a chart that says moon landing ranking chart, and you've got a few different items on there, and you've got your own ranking, and then you've got a team ranking. So I'm going to just explain to you, if we can go to the next slide, there is a little scenario. So this is your scenario. Do you guys want to read it? I can read it out.
You can read it out.
I'll read it out. So you're a member of a space crew scheduled to rendezvous with the mothership on the lighted surface of the moon. However, due to mechanical difficulties, your own ship was forced to land at a spot 200 miles from the rendezvous point. During re-entry and landing, much of the equipment aboard was damaged, and since survival depends on reaching the mothership, the most critical items available must be chosen for the 200-mile trip. 15 items are listed as being intact and undamaged after landing. So your task is to rank them in terms of their importance for your crew to allow them to reach the rendezvous point. So place the number 1 by the most important item, the number 2 by the second most, and so on until you get to 15. So 15 is the least important item. What we would like you to do is, I think we're going to put you into 2 breakout rooms again to work on this firstly on your own. So you'll get 10 minutes and you'll see the section that says My Rankings. And we'd like you all to have a look through this and rank them from 1 to 15 on your own. Once the 10 minutes is up, then with the people in your breakout room, then you'll discuss, and then we want you to do it as a group to put them in your own rankings as well. So discuss the answers that you've put and why you've put them. if somebody challenges you, then you can see, you know, well, you can explain your reasoning behind it and why you've chosen those things. And this is just a really good way of getting you to discuss, work together. You know, how you might work with a partner. If you don't agree on something, how are you going to work on that and make sure that you then can come to an agreement? Hopefully no arguments break out and you will get to an agreement. So what we'll do then is, I think Christian's going to pop you into 2 breakout rooms. So just try and keep an eye on the time. I think we'll do 10 minutes for,
I think, if Christian sets the breakouts for 20 minutes and we just all come back here at 1:30, then spend your time doing your individual prioritization and then discuss with the rest of your team. This is a really key way of agreeing priorities for your business. These are obviously life-saving, so make sure the importance is put on how to prioritize these items. But we'll get Christian to bring you back in about 20 minutes.
Yeah, cool.
Okay,
so
and
the
then
rooms are
obviously
set. Yeah, good.
Go on. No, go on.
So I was just going to say, so the groups have been randomized, so don't be surprised that you're in there with different people. So
Obviously, once you're back, we'll just go back through some feedback on this as well, and we will give you an expert's analysis on what order they should be in. Okay, so enjoy, and we'll see you back here in about 20 minutes or so. Okay.